Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3, patch 5.3, which Creative Assembly has revealed, and what they are going to be adding with this particular patch. Now, it does seem that they did have bigger plans, and they haven't been able to achieve those bigger plans with regards to ancillaries, so I guess we'll have to wait and see how that ultimately plays out. But regardless, so they have asked people for feedback, and they have gotten a bunch of feedback in particular with regards to control and corruption systems, and that they are looking to change those. Now, this is probably the most important point. In Warhammer 1, in Warhammer 2, in Rome, in Attila, these systems were not good for a couple of reasons. One, if you're playing on a high difficulty, you were constantly faced with a public order penalty just because you were playing on a higher level. And the AI with regards to control would trivialize the entire system because they would never have to worry about rebellions. Or very rarely would they have to deal with rebellions. Whereas you as the player would have to deal with constant rebellions unless you spent building slots to get control buildings in pretty much every settlement or a lot of settlements in your empire. This is not a good system. In fact, it is, quite frankly, a really crappy system of handling control. And it is something that I've despised for many, many years. It was one of the main things that put me off with regards to Warhammer 1 and 2. Because you can manage it, don't get me wrong on that, but the way to manage it is to sit on your ass, farm rebellions in order to get the free experience, and if you didn't manage those rebellions, you'd lose your territory. This was not a good system. However, they have made it redundant. So I think there has to be some middle ground on this subject, but regardless of what they decide to do, I do absolutely believe that we should not have a situation of public order penalties just because we're playing on a higher level. And on top of that, the AI should not just completely ignore the system altogether. It should matter to some degree or another. Maybe the entire system of control or / public order is a completely outdated system, and they do believe that as well. And maybe there is a better path forward. For what it is worth, I think that Troy and Pharaoh have actually managed to handle these systems better. Because you're not facing constant rebellions in those games, but you do care about control and public order without being penalized just because you're playing on a higher difficulty level. With regards to corruption, that is its own discussion. Because again, you have the situation where the AI would trivialize the system completely, either getting a bunch of free corruption or being able to eliminate corruption very, very easily, whereas you, on every difficulty, whereas you, as the player, had to deal with a significant mess of a situation. I don't think it's a great idea to go back to the idea of, oh, we're just going to build anti-corruption buildings to manage it, that the AI can make it very easy with a bunch of heroes that they're just wasting around sitting in your provinces just to inflict corruption on you, or remove your own corruption. I do appreciate the fact that in this particular point, Creative Assembly acknowledges that it is different for every single race, the impact. I would say that the Skaven are most impacted in a negative way by the way of how corruption works, not necessarily public order. But either public order control is a really annoying system or it's a trivialized system. That's been the case. I think as far as finding a middle ground, while it's not perfect, Troy and in particular Pharaoh have done a better job with respect to this. Regardless, we'll see what Creative Assembly decides to do on that. It is something for the future. It is not coming in 5.3. So here's what we're going to get in 5.3. And I gotta say that the Ogre Mercenary Recruitment rework, I'm not sure how meaningful this is going to be. Like, when I'm looking at a patch for Total War, either I'm playing the game already a decent amount, or I'm looking, or I'm not, And I'm waiting for a change that will substantially improve the game or really make some quality of life change for a race. The AI changes we got before did make a change, a substantial one. The deeps, the addition of the deeps. The mercenary system, I mean, on one hand, it will incentivize you to not wipe out certain ogre factions, though other factions can and will wipe them out, so that is a problem. But it's nice that we now will be able to get a wider variety of mercenaries. So man-eaters, ogre bulls, different just beyond the basic one, man-eaters, ogre pistol giants, ogre giants, and Mournfang cavalry. So we will be able to get more mercenaries from the ogres, and that is a nice addition. I guess they're just basically releasing systems that they are planning for the Ogre DLC earlier for the Ogre rework, which we know is coming with the next DLC. They're just releasing systems that they feel comfortable to do so early. Then they're redefining Ogre Kingdom bounty, so mercenary contracts. So now instead of picking a contract, at a particular time every 10 turns, now you have certain bounties that each expire on a different timer. So for instance, over here we have one for the Western provinces that would take 22 turns before it expires. We do have one for 10 turns that expires to eliminate Helm and Gorst. This already is a much better system, though I'll be blunt, it is not incentivizing me to play ogres more. But maybe with the Ogre Hall, I probably play an ogre campaign. Maybe I should try it out with 5.3. But on its own, I don't necessarily think it's enough, right? If it was attached to some camp changes, that might have incentivized me to play ogres, but I think I'm just going to wait for the DLC at this point, unless I decide to play with the Ogre Hall. And then ancillary system rebalance and new items. So I feel like they were intending to release this and to be a main feature of the patch with the ancillary rebalance system. But what they're basically saying is that they put it to the test, and they didn't get necessarily the kind of response that they wanted. So they're still working on it, but we are going to get some new ancillaries in 5.3. So 18 new generic ancillaries, which drop only for relevant factions. So like a map with 50% campaign movement range, but also gives you a 20% chance to appear in random nearby region upon ending the turn. I do wonder if you remove this item before the turn ends or start that process, what is going to happen with it? I don't know. Then they're continuing their work to remove the battle map tree clusters, which are still annoying. So that's still a work in progress. Really good to see that. And then there are going to be a bunch of new changes. And because Halloween is coming as well, and it is likely this patch is going to come out basically on Halloween, we're getting a new Vampire Counts unit, Graveguard with halberds, to be able to deal with enemy cavalry. All well and good. We'll see how all of this plays out. I'm not sure necessarily I would bother too much with them, to be quite honest. I understand people have been asking for this, but here's the thing. With the Vampire Counts, because you have so much flexibility in terms of recruitment, you have the option of getting a bunch of good anti-cav units. But maybe it's a case for multiplayer situations, or, I'm not going to say no to it, don't get me wrong. So it's good to have these kind of this kind of unit diversity. What I think they should add on top of this would be the ability of being able to switch between these units, right? Well, like kind of the very limited system of warband upgrade. Like if you have, say, Jade Warriors or Graveguard, or Imperial Swordsmen versus Imperial Empire Spearmen with shields, I think being able to switch between them would be great. But that is all that they've revealed for patch 5.3. Overall, it doesn't seem as exciting as the previous patches have been, but they are laying the groundwork for the next DLC, and I think we're going to see how that plays out. I do wonder when that DLC is going to come out. Probably early December, or maybe content creators like myself will get access to it, late November. I don't know. if I knew, I can tell you anyway, but I genuinely don't know. They haven't told us anything. So this is it. I'll obviously test it out when I am able to play it, but yeah, I mean, maybe the contract thing with the Ogre Hall mod can make Ogres more interesting to play from my point of view, but obviously they need their DLC. Go see and sign out.